Welcome to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm Kathy, and this season is dedicated to exploring the unique world of raising boys. Parenting boys today can feel like trying to crack a complicated code, a mystery, especially when it comes to understanding their inner emotional world. Together, we'll dive into real-life stories, share practical tips, and uncover insights to help you and your son thrive, not just survive. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's unlock the parenting code, one boy at a time. Welcome back to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm your host, Kathy, and today I'm welcoming Kristina and Herbert Heagh-Avritt. Kristina and Herbert have been partners in life and learning for over 33 years. With Kristina's background in education and Herbert's in business, plus their journey raising two sons, they bring heart, wisdom, and real-life experience to their work. They are the founders of Vibrant Family Education, where they help families strengthen relationships and rethink how children learn and grow. And their podcast, Bringing Education Home, extends that mission, giving parents the tools and inspiration to raise happy, healthy, and successful children. Welcome, Kristina and Herb.
Thank you so much for having us. We are glad to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, it sounds like your parenting journey has been shaped by some profound and deeply personal experiences, from raising a son with unique needs to walking through the pain of another son choosing distance and navigating the life-altering impact of Herb's traumatic brain injuries. To help set the stage for our conversation, would you mind sharing a few of the key moments or turning points that have defined your journey so far as a family?
Well, of course, the first one is us meeting in college and basically finishing growing up together, because we got together at 18 and 19 years old. So we've been together that long and joining in force to grow and everything. And it's funny because in some ways we say we're forged by fire. Our marriage has been over 30, about almost 34 years. And it's one of those things that all the ups and downs of life, but I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And then, of course, our first son came along really quickly near our marriage, and then our second son was a couple of years later. And then as our youngest son was, or our oldest son was growing, we realized that he was on the autism spectrum. So of course that was a pivotal point. It's like, oh, how are we going to handle a child with different unique needs, right? And then the younger brother, who was quote unquote normal or average, and him having an older brother who needed some special help. So those were all big things. And then of course my teaching career of 27 years.
Yep. My business, my working for Intel, being an entrepreneur for years and years. We learned a lot. We learned a lot of things that we did right. We learned a lot of things that we did wrong. And part of what we do now is we try and help people learn from the mistakes we made. So that, you talked about our youngest son being distanced. So he's also the father of our grandchild. So I haven't seen my granddaughter in about 5 or 6 years now. I haven't talked to my son in about the same amount of time. And it's really hurtful. It's really confusing because, we thought we had a good relationship. We thought we had good communications. But what turned out is we didn't talk about all of the things that were really important to our family, about some of the history of our family, and about our even though they're kind of light, our traditions and our history. And so when presented with something else, our son took a different path and didn't understand what we were about and what we were doing. And so we didn't have proper communication necessarily in our house.
That was another pivotal
again,
point.
It seemed like we had a great relationship, and almost every person in our life, all of our friends, when they hear about what's happened, is like, what happened? You guys were so close. So even our friends are confused and about what's going on. So we just really try now and help parents communicate with their children better, find ways to bring the families closer together so that some of the stuff that happened to us doesn't happen to them. But there's also a lot of things that we did really right along the way. And so we like to help people figure that out too.
Okay, so there's two questions I wanted to ask just from that point. One of them, how old were you when you started your family?
I was almost 21. So my first son was born right before my 21st birthday.
So that's young. Like that's That's young.
Well,
So,
for this day and age, that's pretty young. But 30 years ago, that was actually pretty normal.
Kind of average.
It is moving back farther and farther. But when we started, it was you got married first, you had kids, and then you really started exploring your life.
well, when I had our son, our first son, our only son, I would have been almost twice as old as when you had yours. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't think I could have done it when I was younger. I didn't have the tools. I hadn't grown up enough myself. I've seen many people be extremely successful raising children when they were young. So I'm not saying it in that way. Everyone chooses their own path. But to me, it's always kind of how did you do it because of being that age? That was the first question. The second one was I'm curious because boys are really where my interest goes. I'm curious as to the age of your youngest son when he cut the cords.
Let's see, he would have been about 26. Yeah, 25, 26.
Okay.
The problem started more around 22, 23.
Right. Yeah. Some of the communication issues and things happened, a couple of years earlier, but then the actual cut was around that age. Mm-hmm.
If someone asked me,
we had a few years of problems before it kind of got stopped, and we desperately tried lots of different things to try and reestablish connection. And it seemed like everything we tried just made things worse. So eventually we just kind of backed off, and then it drifted away, and then there was like a hard break. So it wasn't a right away thing. It was a drifting, and there were some personal and family issues kind of going along with it at the same time. I hurt my head. I suffered my last major traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
My father had passed away. My business was going under because of the traumatic brain injury. So there was a whole lot of things happening all at once that just really came together in a storm.
what I find is that I do think that the 20s, especially the first half of the 20s, are extremely difficult for young boys, growing up, and there's many reasons behind that. But it seems to be a real time, not just for boys, but also for boys, especially in the early 20s, where they're searching to find their own identity, and a lot of boys will try out things. And, it's kind of as a parent, you hope, oh my God, I hope he gets through this without, doing damage to himself or others and gets to the other side. But that particular period of time, and throughout the 20s seems to be a time that a lot of boys just get lost. And it's more common than than maybe it should be because we don't recognize the challenges during that time.
Well, there's also, genetic and anthropological reasons for doing that. So, to maintain viability, the males had to travel farther away to find their mates. And so sometimes the conflicts in the early 20s with young men drove them away from home as kind of a breeding kind of a pattern. So it is kind of built into us biologically. And also, you say early 20s, the last major brain development that happens in adult humans is between 25 and 30. And that last major change allows you to look back at your life in a way that you can look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So it allows you to look back at your life in a different way. And that changes men from that rambunctious 18 to 25, which is an incredibly important time for men to be out there building and growing and using that aggression that they have, that drive that they have to build their life. And then once that last brain change comes in and they settle down, then it really becomes a family building time for them.
My understanding is that happens considerably early for females, and that's part of the issue because we don't change our expectations for males and females. So while they're still going through that time of searching, basically, and feeling their identity, we have the expectations the same as we have for our girls who are ready to accommodate those expectations of moving into womanhood. So the other thing, when you were talking, it was kind of, talking historically, I've often thought that's one of the areas that if we could learn something from history, our boys would benefit from it if we had systems of rites of passage so that they wouldn't have to feel they had to find their own ways to prove that they had moved from boyhood into manhood. And I think a lot of our young boys suffer during the early 20s because we don't have any, very little sorts of a rites of passage to recognize that they are moving out of the stage of boyhood. What do you think about that?
Wow. So
That's amazing.
I can get into that a little bit because some of that I think is kind of by design, and some of that is kind of unintentional consequences. So men don't have very many spaces for themselves anymore. For instance, the Boy Scouts used to be a men only, and there was that sense of sitting around the campfire with the older men and growing and having that bonding and going through, if you could get up to the arrow of light, those kinds of transitions is what we were missing. And there's a couple of other organizations that are kind of like that. I know Indian Guides, when I was a kid, was kind of like that also. Controversially, I'm going to be very controversial here. I think the downfall of that was, again, women wanting to understand men and wanting to come in, becoming the den mothers, and then going on the camping trips. And I remember when I was first in Boy Scouts, everywhere we went, we had to run, we had to be moving, and then when the moms started coming in, it's like, oh, we have to walk. There's too much dust. We got to keep the noise down. Oh, that's too dangerous. And the rites of passage that boys really needed, that really rough, dirty, life-threatening stuff that guys, we thrive in that environment.
Yep.
We're made for that environment. You know, historically we went out and fought the lions and tigers to keep the home safe. And to take all of that away from us really did put a damper on young men. And you can really see it right now in our youth because they are so lost. They're being told that they're bad, that they're toxic for having masculine traits, for wanting to run and be men. And so there's a whole lot of things that are conspiring against our young men right now. And, you know, trying to find in ways to bridge that gap is a really critical thing. And I'm going to shout out one of my main mentors right now is Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson is doing so much right now to try and reach that group of men, to try and give them purpose and identity, because of so much of it has been lost over the last 50 years.
I don't find much of what you're saying controversial at all, and I often say pretty similar things. I'm well aware of, familiar with Jordan Peterson. I would say that my mentor in this space is definitely Richard Reeves. And he's got some excellent work out there as well. And especially if you look historically. So I grew up during the women's movement. I'm part of that generation that established the label male chauvinist pig. And music at the time was, you know, I am woman, I can do anything, you know. And so, you know, having that as my background and seeing how women have improved. I mean, there's always room for both genders to, you know, live better. But women's growth, they've been empowered over the last, 30, 40 decades. At the same time, there has not been the support and understanding for males. And so they not only have not thrived, but they've started to slide. So I think it's a very tough time. And the messages that media and social media give is portraying these young men in a light that I can't imagine what it's like to grow up as a young man today and feel that that's what everybody thinks about you. And actually, that's how it all started for me. Me having a reaction And then thinking, at that time, our son was 3, and then thinking, might someone else think that about my son just because he's a boy? Not because of anything he's doing or saying, just because he's a boy, there's all these, preconceived ideas. And so I do think the space that, our young boys especially occupy today don't have enough male understanding, male mentorship, male groups, male conversations. There's just not enough. But I will say that I find it is starting. And there are those groups. There are more groups right now targeted to men who are trying to sort through some of this stuff. Maybe not enough emphasis on creating those male spaces for our little boys to grow. And where you said the problem was women stepping in and trying to understand, I don't even think it's really trying to understand the males. I think it's assuming that we're kind of all the same. So if I think this way as a woman, that it shouldn't be dirty, you shouldn't be doing rough and tumble, that's what I think you really think, but you're not doing it, so I'm going to help you.
Mhm.
So it's really, if I think women are the people who need to step back and really try to be aware of what's the basis of their thinking. What are they putting on their boys when they're raising them? And that's, I think, where it starts.
So
Yeah,
I belong to a coaching community, and a couple months ago, they had a 5-week class for understanding men, and it was for men, and so it was for the men in the group, and only 2 guys showed up for the class, and 20 women showed up. Okay, because they wanted to understand the guy aspect, and I kind of knew there were going to be more girls there than guys. But I went anyway. And most of the guys knew there were going to be more girls, so they didn't show up because guys can't talk freely when there are girls around.
It's the same with single sex classes in middle school and high school when boys are going through, the throes of adolescence and puberty. Those schools that are advanced enough to understand that some subjects should be single sex subjects if you want your young boys to be able to feel safe enough to be vulnerable in what they're expressing.
Your old men to feel safe enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So a group of guys having a conversation, one woman steps in, even if she's kind of bro, it's going to change. It's going to change.
Absolutely.
2 women come in, it's going to be a completely different conversation. It's going to have, there are no men's conversations if there are women around, because it opens up an unsafe issue for guys. Women say they want guys to show their emotions and to cry, but when guys do that, it actually ends relationship and ends real badly. So they want that in their mind, but in their personage, they see that as a weakness in a man, and it tends to have the opposite effect. So this is one of those places where they say one thing that they want this, but they really don't. And so talking in men's spaces, that we have to have guy spaces, and they're becoming more and more. You have like Curve's gym, a gym where only women can go. Name a gym where only men can go in. If they create one, there will be women beating at the door to demand entry.
Yep.
Because men lose their spaces. Are there men beating down the doors to try and get into the Curves? Not really, because we're going to let you have your space. So, I love that you guys are that interested in it. It is great. I'm interested in you guys. Love women. But at the same time, it's like, you guys need your space, and you need your secrets, and you need to be able to talk to yourselves. And we kind of need that same thing. But for some strange reason, it's like women's curiosity. Oh, I want to see what the guys are doing.
I don't think it's curiosity. I think it's kind of thinking that we all think the same. We all communicate the same. We all have the basic same needs. So I don't think that there's a real understanding and awareness and respect for the differences, and then to be thriving on the things that make us different and supporting each other in our challenges and in our gifts. Like, I think that's where. So, anyway,
Oh, 'cause we
this
need
is
each other.
Yeah.
There is no
absolutely.
like sexism here. It's like men aren't better. Men are better at some things, women are better at some things, but together we're amazing together. And we can do something that we can't do alone. And that's create babies, and that's create the future of life of our species. So it's like we need everybody. And we just need to
Yeah.
find a way to balance that and to let boys be boys and to encourage boys being boys and let girls be girls and encourage girls to be girls, because we need both and they need to be
Well, and
separated.
yeah, I think you have to have the awareness and the knowledge. So, and I don't think it's if you give this attention to this group, then it means you're losing out on the other group. I think we can all raise ourselves up and just do better. And I think because of raising young children, we have an obligation because they are vulnerable. And whatever we're doing, whatever we're thinking, whatever we're passing it on. So I think it's quite a huge. Okay, so I could go on with this forever, but I'm going to try to get us back on here. But I love the conversation. I really do love the conversation. And I think there needs to be much more conversation around that. I want to ask you, what were some of the biggest challenges and joys that you experienced raising your two sons?
So actually everything that you guys have been talking about and me sitting here thinking and listening is like, some of the biggest challenges was whenever I would kind of step in and raise the boys the way I thought they would be, need to be raised. So for example, one of the best stories of everything that we've had is that whenever we would go visit his parents who lived in the middle of a national forest, there were lots of trees and everything, right? And I was like, okay, guys, go outside and play, go have fun. And then I would catch them climbing trees and I'm like, oh no, that's dangerous, get down. And he's like, no, go climb higher. You've got to learn, go on. And so just that difference in our, expectations of the boys was one thing, a challenge, but we helped ground each other in that, like, oh, you're being a little bit too harsh right now. Oh, you're being a little bit too lenient right now, the back and forth like that. So that was one of the challenges. Consistency has always been my downfall, making sure that I'm really consistent with either the rules or the expectations, etc. And then, but a lot of the joys was just, watching them be full of life and full of energy and wanting to explore and wanting to be those go-getters. Our boys were in Boy Scouts, right? And we got to see them go up through the ranks and have all of these wonderful experiences, as well as just, our family trips, taking them on vacation and watching their curiosity and watching what they really were interested in. That was all, really, really fun.
Yeah. So again, we thought we had a really great relationship when they were 14 and 15. I worked at a small electronics company called Intel, and I had a sabbatical, which was basically I got to add vacation to it. So I took 12 weeks off and we drove around the United States. We drove a little over 13,000 miles. We hit 35 states. We were on the road for 9.5 weeks. In the middle of it, we took a cruise out to the Bahamas when we hit Florida. And everywhere we went, we were getting compliments on how well behaved our children were. When we were on the boat, one of our sons actually liked opening the door. So he would walk around he would get on the elevator and just open up the doors for people all day long. When we would go to restaurants, we would have waitresses saying, oh, you guys are so polite. Your kids are always saying please and thank you. It's like, nobody ever does that anymore. And it's like, well, that's just how we are. That's how we do it. So, our kids were so well behaved and complimented and in like tune and doing the right things. It's like we didn't have to punish them. They didn't do crazy, stupid stuff. They were just really in tune with the family. And when we went on vacations and stuff, we went in a van. Towards the end of the vacation, it was great. We would pull up at the place we were going to go. Everybody got out, grabbed exactly what we would be in and out of the van and into our place. We were staying in like 2 minutes flat, unpacked, and then we would go play. And so the connectivity, the seamlessness with the way that we worked as a family on that trip, it still sometimes melts my heart and sometimes makes the separation even more painful, because it's like, what happened?
Well, what you just described, I think is, that's kind of family's dream to take that time, and especially at such a, an important time in development for young boys when they're going through that. They're not quite your little boy anymore, but they're not yet the full teenager yet. It's a beautiful, beautiful time to spend with them. So that's really, impressive, commendable that you were able to do that, and that you made a choice to use your time that way. So, and then, like I can't think of anything more painful than what the more I hear about how you were raising him and intentionally parenting your both children, and the challenges that you must have had with two children, one having unique needs, and trying to do the best for both of them. How did you handle it when it first started? Because I have an adult son as well, because he did have a challenging time in the 20s. I mean, my story could be very different right now too.
Well, I'm going to go for this because I think this is part of my mistake, and where I could have done better. When my son started pulling away, it had to do with a girl, and she seemed very nice and very friendly up front, but as I got to know her, she was very disrespectful underneath, and I saw that. And as it started to come out, it's like, my son is going to see this. And so I didn't want to be involved. So I backed away. I every time I tried to say something, it seemed to get worse. Every time I tried to bring some sort of understanding, it got worse. So it's like, okay, I'm going to back off, and I'm not going to participate so much in this relationship. I'm not, because I kind of saw it ending, which it did later.
After the damage was done.
But in the process of me backing off, because again, every time I said something, every time I tried, it seemed to get worse. Me backing off, okay, it didn't get any better. The communication stopped. Every time I did try, then he took my words to be the worst possible thing that, and it's like, I'm trying, I say I love you, and he's like, well, why would you say something? And it's just like crazy, because I think I'm trying to help, and every time I try, it just gets worse. And so I backed off. I was like, okay, I'll let him come to me. And 2.5 years later, it blew up even worse, because it's like, I can't help. I'll get out of the way. And then getting out of the way created something else in the background that I didn't see coming, that just took me out. So I should have tried more different, and tried communicating, but the backing off and the going, letting you have it. Okay, I'm backing off. Come to me when you're ready. And it just never got.
Well, it's really hard, because it's natural for us to want to protect our kids. And when we see that they're making choices that we know, they're going to cause pain at some point, it is really challenging to not insert yourself and stay connected. Like, that's a real challenge. And sometimes when you put the priority into staying connected, it means that you have to be able to push down those feelings of, I know I can help you if you'll just listen to me. And that is really challenging as a parent. So, we have all kinds of support and understanding for parents raising young kids. But there's not many conversations about when you have, a young adult, like how do you help them? How do you, I mean, if you're talking about it to other parents, that's one way that we can help. But parenting is just, it doesn't stop when they leave high school and start someplace else. So, and I think everyone is doing the best. They're doing the best they can. All of us, parents, children, everybody, they're doing the best they can with whatever skills and strategies and information they have at that time. And they will do better when they can do better. So that's
one of the things we look back on a lot is that, we thought we had great communication, but then when we look back on it, like, oh, well, we could have handled this situation different, or we could have handled this situation different. And one of the examples of that is, as we were even career people, we were still entrepreneurs, right? And so there were times when our budget was crazy because we were trying to, take our regular jobs and turn it into entrepreneurship money, into another business, etc. And at those times, we didn't confide in the boys, age appropriately. When we were having money problems, we didn't tell them. A lot of parents don't tend to communicate that kind of stuff. And so it's those kinds of messages and those kinds of communications that weren't deep enough because we didn't share when they were younger, that when they were older, maybe imply that, oh, well, maybe mom and dad aren't sharing with me at a deep level, kind of thing. And it's just one of those things that we try to share with parents now who we work with, is like, build those deep communication segments early, right? Make sure you're talking about what's going on within the family, around troubles, around challenges, of course, absolutely age appropriate level, right? But make sure that they're included so that they aren't thinking, oh, well, everything is fine, or, oh, mom and dad are mad at me, and really what behind it is mom and dad had a fight instead, and they're just it's just kind of flowing over onto the kids, kind of thing. So that's one of the things that we've learned and that we're sharing a lot, is really build that deeper communication earlier.
So part of that, like the deeper communication, age appropriate conversations, all of that is golden in parenting and helps with your connection. But I think sometimes where we miss the mark with our boys as moms, we think communication is the same. We think that, like, I will talk to you and I will have the same expectations for you that I have for my sister, my mother, anyone else who's female. But when I do that same thing for Herb, I'm putting expectations on our level of communication that aren't fair and disrespectful, in my opinion. But when I understand that my little boy communicates differently, that if I speak to him in a way that it really resonates with him, then we are going to be able to communicate better. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on. I think communication is the vital part of everything as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, so I've got a better picture of, raising the boy who is now distanced. What about raising a child on the spectrum? Because that's something more and more parents are experiencing. And if you haven't had that experience, you really don't know what that looks like for parents or for the children.
Well, we are one of the fortunate set of parents out of all of this. Even though he's on the spectrum, he is very much high functioning. So we don't have the deep hardship of other families that have really, big medical. But again, there were still challenges, the communication, right? Like getting him to speak with us in a way that we understood him and he understood us, right? All the education in class, him getting in trouble in school because he was functioning on a different level than some of the other kids and acting differently than other kids, right? Which caused bullying and things like that. Sometimes misunderstanding between students, those kinds of things. And on top of all of that, I'm a teacher. I graduated from college to be a teacher, and I was working with a child, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm a teacher. I'm supposed to know everything because I'm teaching other people's children. And then I had to back off and say, no, my child's a little bit different, and that's okay. Matter of fact, one of the first classes we took after we got our son's diagnosis was a course or a class that said that
my child is different. And sometimes it hurts.
Sometimes it hurts.
So how old was he when you realized there were differences?
We started realizing it when he was about 5, but at first it was just like communication. He just wasn't quite.
It was earlier than that. It was when he was at the learning center.
Well, yeah.
So more like 2 or 3, I started noticing stuff. We had him actually diagnosed before he got into school the first time, and more controversy because. For the first year, he was bright and shiny and his eyes were open and everything was going well. And then there were some things that happened.
At about 18 months of age.
At about 18 months of age. And he had a fever and things changed and his eyes dimmed and his hair changed and lots of things happened. And then, so we think there was some damage from a medical procedure that was possibly done to him.
Yeah.
because for the first 18 years of his life,
18
he was
months,
18 months. He was bright and shiny and very coordinated, and he had lots of eye-hand coordination movements. And then after 18 months, a lot of that went away and had to be relearned, and some of it didn't quite come back all the way.
So
but yeah,
where did it show
was,
up? Where did it show up that that he wasn't the same as the others? Like
communication. He regressed.
Okay.
He was speaking so much better before that incident. Yeah.
Like when he would want to play with kids, he would back them into a corner and they would feel threatened because he didn't know how to talk to them. So he would like back them into a corner to force them to play with them. Different ways that he communicated, different things that he would say. It just changed. And
he started playing beside kids instead of with kids. It's just really interesting, those different shifts and stuff that we saw.
So how did you handle that as parents? Like, what did you like? Often when our children are different, or if they suffer for some reason, sometimes that's the greatest learning that we have as parents.
That was really, really hard for me. I was bullied a lot as a child. I was very intelligent, and I had also hurt my head as a kid too. And that they call in certain circles, they call that cracking your cosmic egg open. So I was different as a kid. I was a highly sensitive person. I'm an INFJ now, if you understand the Myers-Briggs type index.
Yep.
I'm a different kind of a person, very rare. Out of 100 people, there's less than one of me, based on my sex and the kind of guy I am. So picked on a lot, bullied a lot as a kid, all through school. So when that started happening to my son, it shut me down. I would see that and it would put me back into my trauma as a kid. And instead of being able to stand up for my son, instead of saying, it shut me down, it put me into a really dark place. And so watching what happened to my son made me feel as a failure to a dad when I couldn't rise above my past and help my kid as effectively as I would have liked. We did the best we could. Could we have done more? Oh yeah.
I went into teacher mode. I was like, what kind of services can we get and help him with? How can we help him get through school better? One of the craziest things was that he was so smart in so different areas that we put a discipline plan in place to try to help make him successful and make sure he was within boundaries and stuff at school. About every 2 weeks, we had to change that because he would have thought around it and through it. And so then we would have to change what is his next motivation or what is his next kind of thing that would keep him more in line.
And a crazy thing is the biggest punishment we had for him was taking his books away. Stop reading. That was the biggest punishment we had.
And we had to tell his teachers, take the books out of his hands if you want him to pay attention in class. And they're like, but we're teachers, we can't take books away. And it's like, yes, you can if you want him to learn your material.
Yeah. I think it's really quite interesting and how we are triggered and by our own histories. And I think that what it pulls up in us when we can identify with the same gender, because we know, up front and personal, what that felt like for us. I think, like, I was terrified I was going to have a girl. I thought, God help me, I don't know that I'll be able to do it, because I thought, is she going to be as sensitive as I am? Is the world going to feel painful, in the smallest of things? Like, how am I going to be able to help her when I've worked so hard on myself, but I'm still overly sensitive? And so I was relieved and excited when I had a boy, because it's kind of like, all right, let's go. Like I'm not going to be dumping my stuff in that. I don't know exactly what he's going through because he's not a girl. So I don't think we think about that so much when I don't think we think about it so much. And I think reflecting on it can be really helpful.
I had 4 sisters. I was so thankful to have 2 sons.
I had 3 brothers and I was like, oh my gosh, I have boys.
Oh, so, okay. So then we were a family of 6 and 5 of us are girls and 1 brother.
Mhm.
So, but we won him over to our side. So I kind of get what you're saying. But he also is someone that other people, especially women, resonate towards him because he understands what it's like to live with a whole brood of women. So
Exactly.
there are pluses to that as well. Okay, I have a question. Especially in the environment that boys are growing up in today, like parents who are a little bit further down the road than you are. What do you think is the most important thing for parents to do or to believe about their boys in order for them to grow up to be strong, healthy examples of masculinity? What do
Wow,
they
that's a good
need?
question. For me, it's a good fit education. It's like letting them be boys, letting them have their movement, have their out of school experiences, have them be, able to be on the go and be hands on if that's truly the way they are built and want to be, right? It's one of those things that we are curtailing our boys and they're not able to have the activity level that they really, really need. And so that goes back to part of what we're doing with our business is making sure that families are understanding, yeah, boys need to have a little bit different education, and let's
Yeah.
make sure that that happens.
And some boys are really rough and tumble, and you need to not force them to sit in the education and learn reading and writing and arithmetic. You're gonna you're gonna make it worse. You're gonna turn them. They're gonna have so much aggression built up, and you let them play. You let them play for another couple of years, and then at 6 or 7, then you will be amazed at what you get out of them.
They can learn quickly.
And I'm going to go back to kind of go back a little bit in our conversation because we kind of talked about 18 to 25-year-olds. There's a certain part of the population in prison that they put there just until they're 25 because once they're 25, they're not going to be a problem anymore. There are certain traits that young men have that if they are extreme, they will get in trouble and they probably will end up in jail. But again, that last brain hit at 25, 26, once that hits, they'll be perfectly okay in society. So there's something that happens in young men. They're going to be rambunctious. They're going to be crazy. That's okay. Let them, because when it's time, they will become what you need. If you let them be what they need to be when they're young, they will
And
become what they need to be when they're older.
and provide that environment where they can satisfy that natural need in a way that they will benefit from it and society. Like they won't hurt themselves or hurt others, but they will be able to do what they need to do in that particular. So to have that awareness of what they need and then be able to provide the environment so they can, do what they
Yeah,
need to
because
do.
if you shut them down and then you shut them down and then you shut them down and all they keep getting is shut down, then you're going to end up in a situation like right now where Mike Rowe says there's over 8 million jobs right now that are listed in the United States. And there's over 8 million people from the age of 18 to 25, which is our prime work age force. And they're unemployed because they've just been told they can't do anything
Yeah.
and they're told they're useless. And so they're home playing video games and they're not doing anything. So we have a huge population of
Yeah.
working age men who have been beaten down so much that we're losing them in society. And that's
Absolutely.
absolutely tragic.
Yeah.
However, we have our newest generation coming up where they see all of these problems and they're coming around it and working their way through it. So the next generation is going to be a lot better. I shouldn't say a lot better, but they're going to have different challenges. But this generation that we have right now of 18 to 25-year-olds, they had it rough. They got beat. They got beat hard.
What's the name of that book? It's just come out, I think, last year, um, where he's talking about the some of the results, the impact that social media and that world is having. He talks about in that the phone-based childhood is replacing a play-based. What's it called? I just
Yeah.
finished it about a week ago.
I'd love to find out what that is, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm seeing as a teacher, and as well as like our kiddos who are being raised on a phone, on a tablet. There's so many more things happening with them that parents have to wake up. We have to make sure that boys, girls, whoever are outside playing, who are in nature, who are moving and growing and exploring, not connected to TV and things when they're so young.
So I'm gonna bring up my brain damage again, because it's put me in a different state of mind as well. If I'm on my phone too much, I feel terrible. I start to feel anxious. I start to feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to blame it on my brain damage because I've been paying so much attention because of all the things that are going wrong. So getting on social media too much for me is dreadful. And then I'll put my phone down and I'll go outside and I'll start working on projects. I'll mow the lawn, I'll do something, and I feel so much better. And so because I'm giving it to the brain damage to make it that sensitive for me to notice. But for all of these people who have gone into it and they don't have these brain structures that are broken, so it's like, oh, hey, look, this is weird. They get addicted to it. They get into it. They don't know that they're feeling bad. But our littles get them away from it is so important.
Well, that's what this man. I will
Remember
get
as soon as we end the call.
Yes, I will. I probably will. But that's one of the things that he talks about is that, and like I can definitely see it, and especially in the last 5 years, starting up my own business, spending way more time on a computer than I ever have in my whole life, learning about social media, which was never part of my world. But like you, in some ways, I know, like I will start something and it's like it's sucking the life right out of me. It is not bringing any joy. And as soon as I step away from the internet and, get out, walk out in nature, like I just feel rejuvenated. And then I try to go back and get back into it as long as I'm finding joy. The minute it starts to suck the life out of me, I know that as a red flag. But the problem is that children who have grown up with that screen in front of their face before they could even talk, they don't know any different. So that's what's normalized in their world. And that's the scary part of it. And that's what this book is about, is like trying to put the stop on some of that and getting back to where people understand what it's like to live in a world without screens and the damage that the screens are actually having on our young people that are growing up now. I will find that.
We talk about teaching people how to be people again.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and he also said, like, there were several things in it that really resonated with me. And one of them was talking about providing environments where kids could just be children. So when you talked about going out in the woods, like unsupervised, we don't have that anymore. Like, my generation, you did. Your mom said, come back by 5 o'clock they never asked where you were going.
Lock you out of the house. What are you talking about? Go away, be gone.
Yes, but there is none of that. This guy I don't know if you remember it or not, but in the playgrounds, there used to always be, there was a round thing that had metal bars coming out of it.
Merry-go-round. Yep.
Like a merry-go-round, but you would spin and, to get on and off was really challenging. Well, those are kind of banned. You will never see one of those, but yet that was the generation where children learned to navigate risk, to appreciate excitement and fear based on risk, and they don't have that experience enough.
Yeah, and swings, jumping out of swings, you get as high as you could go, and then you launch yourself because that's yeah. So our children are kind of overprotective. They don't have that opportunity to develop those skills and conflict resolution. They don't have that anymore. Like, and I know even because I still go back in the school sometimes and substitute. And when I was reading the book, I thought, I kind of, put my head down a little bit. It was like he was suggesting perhaps recess should be a time where kids play. They make their own rules. It's not, you can't do this in this area. You can't swing this way. You can't go up the slide. You can only go down. Only 5 people at a time on this piece of equipment. And when he said it, it was kind of like, like I remember my first teaching job, which was
ages ago, with a huge number of children, elementary children, in the playground, two teachers at different ends, but you were not supervising really. You were there as the adult if someone needed to come to you for help. It was completely different.
Yeah,
I don't
completely different.
remember playground adults when I was a kid.
No.
We
You
had
also grew up in
we
a
had
small school.
okay, so I grew up in a little town. We're in this town now called Prospect. There was 55 people in my high school. There was 11 people in my graduating class.
Oh, wow.
Small. Okay.
Really
so
small.
when we moved here when I was in third grade, they had this really awesome play structure that was made out of pole logs. And it was 2 stories, and there's ramps and ladders. And on the outside, there was like these tires that were attached to the outside, and it was this big L-shaped thing. And in the middle of the L-shape, there were poles with tires on it. And we would play tag on this thing, and we would run up, and I could jump farther than everybody but one kid. So we would run up on this thing, land on the pole, jump 15 feet in the air, across the air, land on these tires, and try and keep from touching the ground and getting tagged. I look at that now, I wouldn't let a kid do that for all the money in the world. We did that every day. A couple kids broke their arms, a couple kids broke their legs, never stopped, had fun. It was amazing. And I remember one kid made a jump that I was always too scared to. And one day I tried, I missed, didn't kill myself, but it's like, it was so, but yeah, that is what kids
are
need
missing
now.
right now.
Because it's
Well,
like
we
Maybe
definitely
not that extreme, but some of it.
Well, the pendulum really swings, like certainly it happens in education, but it's almost like we've gone too far the other way of overprotecting. We don't let children be children anymore. So for a whole bunch of reasons. Okay, I want to ask you something. So you have a lot of experience in parenting. You also understand a little more than maybe the average person does about other families because that's connected with your business as well. So if you could go back today and give yourselves one piece of information, like you're right at the very beginning of raising your family, what would you say?
Beat your youngest kid a little more often.
Stop it.
So that way when he leaves, it's like there's a reason for it. No. What would I do different?
No, what would you tell yourself?
What would I tell myself?
I would tell myself and trust my inner instincts a little bit more, because I was just fresh out of college as being a teacher. I was like in that mindset of, okay, I know what to do for kids now.
Yeah.
And then I would let that teaching overshadow my mom instincts at times. And it's like, no, go back and revisit those mom instincts. Yeah, absolutely. Get information if you have questions or you need help or support, but trust that mom instinct a little bit more.
I would tell myself to be a little more verbally supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I had made a choice that I wanted my kids to be proud of themselves. So when they did something, I would try and like, how are you feeling about yourself? And I wouldn't necessarily tell them that I was proud of them because I didn't want that to be external. And I think I missed an opportunity there. I think I missed a big opportunity there. And even later in life, it's like, I told my kids, it's like, I didn't say this to you because I wanted you to feel it for yourself, not from me. And I apologized. So they should feel it for themselves, but they should also know that dad's proud of them.
But something you just said there resonated quite deeply because especially when our children are younger, we really are doing what we think is the best thing for them. But one of the gifts, I think, of when they are out into the world on their own is that we don't have to be so rigid in what our role is as the parent anymore. I remember being a young woman and sending a letter to my father, and who, I loved, but we were estranged for a little bit of time. And sending him a letter and then receiving one back from him that was like, who is this man who loves me so deeply and expresses himself so beautifully and tells me what his regrets are and tells me what he thought I was thinking and feeling. And just the beauty of not being bound as tightly in what the expectations are to be a parent when your child has become adult. If you like there, it's never too late. It is never, ever too late.
Yeah. And that's the hope, right? That's the wish.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
Well,
she she sees our youngest son every once in a while at one of her family gatherings. He won't come to my family gatherings. He will go to her family gatherings. Um, and she still tries to invite him back. I can't. I'm
We're working on
every
it.
time like I said, every time
We're
I
working
try,
on it.
every time it just gets worse. So I have to wait till he comes back, prodigal son kind of stuff. And that's why I jokingly said I wish I had hit him when he was a kid, because it's like sometimes now it hurts. It hurts. It's and if I didn't love him so much, it wouldn't hurt this bad.
absolutely.
But when it first happened, I would be like walking across the house, and then I would just collapse on the floor, just absolutely shattered. I do not wish him death, but it would have been easier had he died than what is going on. Because the living death just it rips it out of you in a way that oh. But again, there's also hope sometime that he'll come back. But he's also in his 30s now, so that brain change has already happened. So don't know what's
We'll
going
see.
on. There's
Yeah,
just
but it all,
hope and
yeah,
pray at this point.
I would say that it would be very hopeful in the 30s, like a lot more hopeful than in the 20s. And I think as long as the door is open, and Kristina, you've got the door open, then, you walk through it sometimes. So as long as that door is open, you never know what's going to happen. And if people keep reflecting on whatever their own role was, like not stopping trying. I don't think we ever stop, trying to figure out just how do we move forward and not giving up. Like it's not that you
So
want to
my
cause
best
more
friend,
pain.
Right.
so my best friend has children about the same age as mine, and he has three daughters, and he went through the exact same thing. They all stopped talking to him. They got mad at him. They moved out, excommunicado. But they've been coming back to him recently and rebuilding the relationships. And we also had the same kind of you kind of hinted at it when the children start going that way. It's like you have to walk on eggshells around your children so that things don't get worse, so that they don't flip out and take your grandchildren away. And it's like you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells around your children. You raise them. They know who you are. They should know. And it's like
I
so
They're
don't know.
still
I
that
agree
hungry.
with you. I don't know that I agree with that. Just like we're doing our best, so are they. And if they have an idea of us that isn't accurate, then it could be because we haven't shown them, because we are doing what we think is the best thing to do. So, well, I'm hopeful for you,
Thank
actually,
you.
because you both seem to be very reflective and intentional in what you're doing. Just, keep some hope there, especially in the 30s. If it's meant to be, they say. Okay. Before we finish today, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had of?
No, I think we've covered a big gamut, and this is a little bit different podcast than we're usually on. So yeah, it's really been reflective and helpful, and I really just wish that the message that the other parents who are listening get from this is keep going, keep
Yeah.
raising your boys the best that you can, give them some space to run and play, but on the other hand, do you and do them, and really figure out how to communicate the best.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right.
yeah.
Well, before we end, I always ask two questions just for fun. So the first one would be, what would be the title for a movie about your family life? And then what would be a short synopsis?
Oh, that's interesting.
Wow, it's been all over the place.
It has been.
We don't have a consistent theme.
The misadventures of the Heagh-Avritt family. From loving family to broken to hopefully back again together again.
Okay, well, that sounds like an interesting movie. All right, and the second question I ask is a little bit different because you already have a grandchild. So I'd like you just to think of this a little bit differently. So the question is, picture yourself sharing some wisdom with your child as they are entering the world of parenting today. And what would you say to them? So imagine that your son is having another child, but you're in a good relationship. So you're going to have this conversation. What words of wisdom would you give him about raising this child? And this child is a boy.
Oh, this child's a boy, not a granddaughter.
No.
Remember all the silly things that you did as a kid and had fun, and let them do it too, as long as it's not too dangerous.
And Herb?
Good luck.
We're here for you, bud.
If he was going to have another child, I just want to let him know that he's loved.
And that's all he really needs to know. All right. Well, listen, thank you, both of you, for this conversation. It went in different places than I had expected, and I love talking with you both. Where can listeners follow you and understand more about the services that you offer?
So you can find me on Facebook at Kristina Herbert, and all of my company information is there. If you're looking specifically for the company, it's vibrantfamilyeducation.com. And you can get a hold of me right through there. So vibrantfamilyeducation.com.
And our podcast is called Bringing Education Home. And you get a lot of conversations, not quite this like this,
but family-centered.
We go all over the place. Lots of fun.
Well, I'll make sure that I put those links into the show notes. And I'm sure that any parent who has listened to this will be thinking a little bit differently, especially if their children aren't yet at that stage that your children are at. It's a good thing to be thinking about the possibilities for the future. Yeah. So thank you.
When kids come into this world, it's like for the first several years, they don't talk. You have to do everything for them. And that sets an expectation of how you're going to treat them for the rest of your life. And they grow up, they learn to talk, they keep doing stuff, but for some reason parents tend to see their children still as babies and need to be taken care of. So grow up, let them grow up with them, and just don't keep them as babies. Don't see them as babies. See them as the fully formed humans that they are from birth, and you just get to guide them for a few years until they take off on their own.
That's beautifully worded. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you again. It really has been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it has been a pleasure being here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and tune in next week for more conversations about raising boys. If you're a parent raising a boy in today's complex world, be sure to explore sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll discover expert guidance and support designed to help you unlock your full parenting potential. As Amelia Gambetti says, this job is too difficult and too beautiful to do alone. Together we can explore this adventure and discover the magic of raising boys.